ごめね、サントンタス.
It's literally the elitist mentality that kills games like this. When the only people you have left are like losers that just play the game too much for their own good.
Look, if you're a casual player, then in-game content is going to feel unfair.
Oh, absolutely. 1,000,000% in this game. If you don't pull Miyabi, Astro Yao, go. What is this? Like, have a little bit of self-respect.
Tenjo Tenge, Yui ga Tokusan.
Hi everyone, Hyokon side. When I started planning this video, there were still no drama related to HP inflation in social media. It just works so well with current narrative by mere chance. It took months in preparation just by researching, understanding, improving mechanically and fighting delusions that all human beings build over time, especially in such hard games as Zenless Zone Zero, and by hard I mean its marathon nature and problems tied to it that comes with mastering the game. All discussions and learning of game flow, basic and complex mechanics, fighting FOMO and impulsive desires lasting throughout vast time span to finally find truth, free from prejudice and hasty conclusions. The easy way to understand the game, and besides all efforts, I cannot guarantee that this guide will be useful for each player, as it is a deep dive in most complex systems of the game, an unnecessary advantage to shine beyond expected of developers. If you are interested to learn something new or refresh already utilized knowledge, today I offer you, community, the tool to evaluate all your efforts objectively, from builds to skill, an almanac of data that was gathered by different people, analyzed and tested by yet another wannabe tryharder, the tool I would love to have myself months ago. From tourists to Shiyubots, all sides of player spectrum are welcome here. Hope my efforts will be assessed fairly. Excluding basics that can be learned by playing the game or watching novice guides, in pursuit to understand in full how this game works, you will inevitably come across the damage formula, great result of data mining and testing from particular players and community as a whole. In this particular Google document, linked in the description, you can find a set of formulas related to each other. After fighting initial confusion with math, it appears actually an accessible for novice tool. The main possible issue is that operating set of basic data requires precise skill to read them properly and not losing track of variables appearing retrospectively, like target def participating in effective def formula. For these guide purposes I will free you from learning it yourself and cherry-pick the most important confusing parts and explain it as simply as humanly possible, without losing sense. Just bear in mind that you can always check it out yourself or use it in such tools as OK Music Calculator. We will start with one of the most confusing parts, diminishing returns principle, and after that matters will become only easier. In math summary, it is a result of multiplying positive values greater than 1, like modifiers that give % damage, or flat values, like attack, and receiving different result based on values difference. In human terms, it means that there exists an ideal balance between disc-obtainable damage formula multipliers, such as crit damage, attack % and elemental damage, where you will achieve better result. Players often refer to it as an overall stat balance and evaluate it by eye or feeling, resulting in such recommendations as 2500 attack to 150 crit damage. Should I tell you that it is not an ideal calculation? The beauty of these simple stats is in how these easy to understand separately terms create a whole system of correlation between each other. The truth is that stat balance can be objectively evaluated only by creating a matrix of expressions, including all stats that give positive yields on result damage and comparing them between each other. Math incoming. Simple example for two sets of modifiers. If we have two 10% increase values and multiply them between each other, we will have 1.1 multiplied by 1.1, which equals 1.21. And it is greater than just single 20% increase, and most importantly, the larger modifiers get, the exponentially bigger flat difference we get for balance, like 1.2 multiplied by 1.2 gives 144, which is marginally bigger increase than expected. Also, balance calculation must account teammates and in-combat buffs to minimize the diminishing returns. It is important to remember all buffs that are not appearing on character screen, because damage formula for attack will depend on them too, and DR will apply. But after learning all the complexity of simple numbers, a question still remains. But should you really do all math yourself? If you have will and time, use calculator to see the difference. You just now received all the info to understand how calculator works. Cool, but it is not really necessary for using it, so why you need all this info in the first place? It creates a system in your head, a general knowledge to use precise tools. Engineers, for example, don't do calculations by themselves, but they know how it works. It allows you to make moves on the go, to objectively question information that you obtain and result in more effective performance. Returning to the balance, there is a pure imho suggestion. If we criminally discard all details, I have a ratio for you to use or criticize. 800 attack to 50 crit damage to 10% elemental damage. I use it myself daily when I have no pursuit to compare discs on most of the characters. Now, I would call outgoing damage calculation as a case solved, but didn't I forget something vital? Hottest take ever to process. Crit rate is not a damage stat. Fellows from mentioned Google Doc actually had to create a separate formula. Why? It is useless in calculating balance of separate attacks, as it influences average damage over time, not the result of a single hit. By being a probability evaluation of applying crit damage modifier to the attack, it highly depends on set of circumstances. How long your fight is, how much separate attacks in rotation do you have, are you set to restart the room until attack crits? All these matters have nothing to do with damage balance calculation and highly affect the balance value of crit damage as consequence. The only way to account for balance of crit rate to actual damage stats is to assume hits being applied indefinitely in time. Now it becomes just a crit damage stat effectiveness reduction up to reaching 100%. Where, I hope you will not doubt this, crit damage modifier will always apply. The 1 to crit rate to crit damage ratio is a pure psyop created to ignore important details. Basically, it is vital only for effective stat distribution calculation for non-crit characters who get no crit from passive, weapon or other sources, like supports or stunners, where building crit rate over 50 often result in lack and imbalance between other stats. Now, when words were spoken, we'll simplify the matter. On average, crit rate is a crit damage effectiveness multiplier, so for 4.8 crit roll to match 3% from attack roll, you have to crit around 60% of the time. So you try to build 800 attack to 50 crit damage with 30 crit rate. After around 2400 attack and 150 crit damage, 100% crit rate is a must to be effective, and all extra rolls in crit damage beyond this balance will have fixed efficiency of 100%. In Anomaly Formula, there are actually less stat evaluation problems, but the mechanic itself seems to be non-intuitive. There are two different important parts of any anomaly: anomaly damage and anomaly buildup. Buildup depends on frequency of attacks and their anomaly buildup value, which is, funnily enough, is not stated anywhere in the game. Every attack has a fixed value of anomaly application size, how much of progress bar it will fill, and actually on this value anomaly buildup modifier applies. You can find it on specific sites like hakush.in, link in the description. On other side, anomaly damage is actually an interesting one. It consists of two parts. First one is average damage you apply during build-up, which include all same element teammates attacks, their AP stats and buffs they have. Lastly, anomaly trigger moment, when it uses average damage collected during anomaly build-up and apply on it both anomaly type damage formula and debuffs on the enemy. Buffs and debuffs are important separation for this case, as you could have already assumed. Buffs are generally what effects are on your character, and debuffs are effects on the enemy. Returning to stats and their balance, average damage used in Anomaly Formula does not account crit values, so the only two stats important for scale are Anomaly Proficiency and Attack. AP, besides being flat value, actually transfers to percent, similar to Attack. So devs value Attack 3 times higher than AP. Why so? Because Anomaly Proficiency apply only to Anomaly Damage average, and depending on a character, affects only a small part of their damage. Besides, attack percent is accounted in both usual attacks and anomaly. Having this info on hand will again simplify the stat balance. You have to find a pie chart of damage distribution for particular character you wish to balance and get the percentage of average damage being anomaly. After that, you have to account anomaly proficiency effectiveness to be the exact percent you got from pie chart. For 50% of character damage being anomaly, AP will be only 50% efficient. Usually, anomaly characters have tech that scales from AP until reaching certain spot, not always. Hi to Vivian and her unlimited AP scale. In such case, you should prioritize reaching AP cap for passive and afterwards use already described principle of balance. Usually attack is a choke point. Refer to 600 attack to 90 AP balance if not in a mood to bother much. The hardest dependency of two stats in game is actually Def Shread to pen ratio. In difference to damage stats, they work on reducing enemy defense and by that increase damage taken by enemy. At first they seem to be intuitive with percent increase in wards, but have actually the opposite problem with balance from damage stats. Remember the balance equals more damage rule from previous blocks? As mentioned, this applies to values greater than 1 only, but pen and Def Shread are different. If present, they are less than 1 values, and number gets lower the more stat value you have. So rule works vice versa. The more balanced and higher these values are, the less efficiency they give. Having 10% of both will result in 19% effective reduction instead of 20. If it was one of these modifiers only, 50% reduction in both give you only 75% total instead of 100%, and equal balance is a worst case scenario. Try not to stack these both modifiers in one team, but also remember that they are still better than nothing in case you can get them for free. Less efficient does not equal less useful. Where does it actually apply? You can see in damage formula that effective def represents a decrease in final damage output, so you want to negate it as much as possible, but even reducing enemy defense to 0 will not result in insta-wipe. Sadly, you still have to reduce boss initial HP. This is useful to understand too. Defense doesn't increase boss HP, but reduce the damage taken, and that's the reason why Def Shread and pen ratio actually affect damage numbers popping off enemy during battle. They show damage dealt to boss HP meter and not the damage released by your character. It is both convenient and not in the same time somehow. Last part before building character, understanding the character's kit itself. All previous stats described are only viable in account with character's base stats. The most important for damage formula is attack base. In ZZZ, base attack of character is actually a summary of flat value attached to character by defs, Wengen attack stat, and passive B, D and F. This is the number that, after adding flat attack, goes to damage formula multipliers. Additionally, formula includes modifier from buttons that are different for each character and grow with button level. Lastly, core passive skill cap is also vital, but not always. You should decide with accounting overall stat balance if maxing passive is actually good or not, and if passive is impactful at all. For example, I can mention trigger passive that gives daze. Besides losing stun efficiency, I run my trigger in Miyabi Soukaku team for her personal signature buffs and personal damage. Great example why in some cases you can ignore passive to yield more. Now, with all the info on our hands, we can finally go to disks. To understand disks value better, we can generalize every luck-based parameter as a substat equivalent. Main stats are always equal to 10 effective substats, so prioritize them first. Effective substats refer to the most scalable stats for particular character. Usually attack percent and crits for classic DPS, and attack percent with anomaly proficiency for anomalists. These can differ from character to character, so take in account specific character needs. In substats on one particular disk we can obtain up to 8 rolls for crit-based characters and 7 rolls for anomalists. This includes initial first rolls and all additional random procs with maximum of 5 for natural 4-star. Technically, crit characters are easier to build due to scaling from free stats, when anomalists have to hit substats with 50% chance to miss into wrong ones instead of 25% for crit chars. Also, because of mechanic that disallows main stat of the disk to be represented as a substat, such unique main stats as elemental damage or pen ratio are stronger for 5th slot in potential to have all effective substats in ideal circumstances. As example, for anomalists, excluding attack percent from 4th, 5th and 6th slots main stat is even more vital because they scale from 2 substats only. Finally, there are still damage substats besides effective ones. like Flat Attack, Flat Pen and Anomaly Proficiency for crit characters. They are harder to evaluate, as Flat Attack value depends highly on base attack of the character, Flat Pen being more effective as more defense reduction percent stats you have, and AP for crit characters efficiency depends on their damage distribution pie chart. Just keep in mind that they are 60 to 80% less valuable as main scalable substats. So with all above yep, we can create the ideal building strategy overall. First discs that your build will depend on are slots 4, 5 and 6. Rolling main stats and decent substats is generally harder and more valuable on these. After obtaining them, roll slots 1, 2 and 3 with fixed main stat to fulfill balance needs. Evaluate discs value by effective subs including first roll, and evaluate builds by how close you are to ideal rolls overall. In my opinion, crit characters discs are good with 6 rolls and more, when anomaly discs good with 5 rolls. This is an acceptable value to not dismantle the disc even if it's not usable in current builds, for future character needs. Also, using calibrators is generally better for elemental damage, impact, energy regen, crits and anomaly main stat discs. They have lowest chance to appear, and crafting them with calibrators is just more valuable. Returning with stats, to briefly evaluate characters' builds, I have personal rating. After counting all 6 discs, for crit characters 30 overall effective procs is a good build, 40 is close to ideal, for anomaly 25 is good and 32 is close to perfect. Congrats on creating the best character build, now we have to use it right. In my subjective observation, build and substats only brings 50% difference, but performance in this game actually yields 100% on average and beyond, but it is harder to achieve. We will discuss now different general gimmicks excluding personal rotations for characters. Every agent in game has its own tech that gives efficiency, learn it separately and practice to maximize the efficiency. First performance advantage comes with learning battle conditions. As an example, we'll take Deadly Assault. We have gimmicks related to boss and 3 extra buffs. Gimmicks often give besides points generation some combat buff, like Bringer receives more anomaly damage until activating blade attack. Use them wisely in team composition choices and during battle. Buffs are different meta, with all info on stats provided previously, we can read them better and see value clearer now. Beware that these buffs are woody and I often see players struggle with understanding them in full. Take your time accounting all buffs stated in description and don't stop on just separating them in stun anomaly ultimate groups. Some of them are just generally better than others and can benefit even not signature team comps. In battle, we can return to gimmicks. I see a lot of complaints about timer content in game, but after excelling level when you struggle to clear, timer becomes a valuable source of evaluation. Every gimmick in combat can be valued as how much time it saves in rotation. The holy grail are quick swaps, when your character can perform attack after switching to other teammate. Miyabi Shumatsuki, Evelyn stacks chain attacks, basically all characters X specials in the game. The possibilities are limitless. I count here how fast you can press buttons after switching as well, like ultimate. Next gimmick is Dodge Parry Combo. It is useful in combat where you get points for dodges or for characters that utilize dodges in their attack. You can also try laying dodge counter in between. Resource pre-stacking is another general recommendation. Energy, stacks, anomaly builder prepared for stun or buff windows are vital to increase score. Find precise balance by looking for top showcases and try to implement it as close as possible. As last general gimmick to reduce timer, I would mention shortcuts for basic attacks. They are part of character's precise tech, but every character has them. Learn them specifically to get better performance. I will separately mention the real milestone of performance growth, where your skill impression can be separated in before and after. Manual chain attack. It is commonly referred as clunky and hard mechanic to learn, but it is really easy to use once you learn the basics. Manual chain doesn't actually block you from doing anything. It gives extra mechanic. Holding special or basic attack button will ignore chain activation frame, so you can play both auto chain rotations and manual rotations after activating manual chain attacks. The main issue people have with it, button mashing here, doesn't work. If you already can separate your team attacks kit into separate attacks and give some time understanding where chain activation frames are, you will find manual chain is just a better version of auto chain. You can use stun 2 second increase time after using chain properly, lay more swap attacks if needed, utilize gimmicks like Harumasa Quivers better, or as Miyabi Sokaku manual rotation, use more freeze anomaly to expand damage window even beyond rational and lay up to 5 Shumatsuki attacks in a single stun. I do now and will always opt for learning this mechanic, as it gives the unprecedented feeling of control and awareness of what you do in combat. And the last point to mention for performance is a reality check. You will never perform ideally in all of your combats. Looking up perfect showcases brings false feeling that the performer do this rotation all the time. It is simply not true. Perfect rotations take lots and lots of restarts, depending on inevitable misinputs and misplays, random events in combat and general lack of experience for particular rotations. Your true goal in mastering the game is the excluding luck parameter with vast amount of practice, to get more good rotations on average. This is why I personally love endgame separation in ZZZ. Shining Bright in sheer defense requires performing perfect rotation once, when Deadly Assault require good average performance instead. And please, I beg you, don't take all this sweat as a must. Tweaks above are viable only if you want to play better. Don't ever do what you dislike. The less stress you have in life, the better its quality will be. But keep in mind, you can't evaluate the pleasure of achievements you didn't achieve. Maybe the info from this video will provide feeling that will make you never go back. And that's it for a complex guide to utilizing two powerful gameplay aspects into a hollow purple of skill. Now I want to give special thanks to content creators that utilize this info for us and, in correspondence, made guide like this possible. OK Muzi for calculator and guides, Apple for immense testing, EOXS for raising the plank of discussion regards meta, I Win to Lose, Justin25, Mist Splitter Reforged, I'm Ravenous for Kids Explained, Yoji for sweating so hard that his content can be used to indefinitely improve rotations just by partially implementing them, Shanaha for all info utilizing and time saved on game related content, for all the vibe given with their videos, Average Luck Gamer, KT the 7th, Flossing on You, Sol, Codex Chrono for chill streams, all content creators I forgot, regular players I discussed matters with in Discord, and all of the community for being just better. Thanks for watching this far, feel free to comment any additions you feel important to mention, and as always, stay awesome as you are, see you on future content, and be the water in your teapot hot. Bye bye!